Welcome to the next episode of the Connor and Heffernan Show. My name is Mark. My co-host Montana is to my left on the screen. We had some pretty big sport news come up. Stephon Diggs, pretty big move to the Texans. The Texans were already proven to be a pretty dangerous team in the AFC this next year based on what they did this last year. This just adds to that, right? Stephon Diggs, when he is on, he is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And CJ Stroud, he's rookie of the year. So whether it be, CJ Stroud has a sophomore slump, I don't know. But if he's as good or better, this Texans team is slowly starting to turn themselves into Super Bowl dark horse. What are your thoughts on this move for Stephon Diggs to go to the Texans in place of, draft spots for the Bills?
I mean, here's the thing. The Bills definitely lost this, but at the same time, I think that the Diggs situation was not working out anymore. And it's not Josh Allen's fault. It's not Diggs' fault, but I don't think that connection was there. There was frustration that was building up, and the stats were just not showing up. It wasn't what it needed to be. So it was time to move on. I was honestly really thinking that he was going to Texas, but I thought he was going to that Texas team that we both can't stand, and that would be the Cowboys. I thought the Cowboys were maybe this was going to be the move they made, but the Texans makes a lot more sense, honestly, I think, for him long term. And I think the Texans, like you said, dark horse, bro. That's the perfect word. I mean, they are a Super Bowl dark horse now. There is no question about it. And honestly, you could have maybe said they were even before this, but now they're a lock to probably be that AFC Super Bowl dark horse, I would say, because the Ravens, I don't consider a dark horse. I consider them a full-fledged front runner. I think when we talk about dark horse, I think it is the Texans. So I think it's a great setup. I think Stroud is a good quarterback for Diggs, and I don't think that Allen was a bad quarterback for him, but I think that Stroud seems to be really poised and have a really good IQ. And not that Josh Allen doesn't have a good football IQ, but I feel like Stroud might make better decisions and be a little bit better under pressure. And he's a rookie. Josh Allen has been in the league several years. He's gone to AFC championship. I mean, he is a credible quarterback, but I think Stroud is a better fit for Diggs. And I think we'll see that in the win-loss column and also in Stroud and Diggs's stats. So I think it's great. I think it's a great setup for the Texans. And like you said, Super Bowl dark horse, without a doubt, bro. I would say that's without a doubt.
Yeah, and I'm reading this article here. So originally, Stephon Diggs, before he got traded, he had 40 years on his contract left.
Ooh,
and the Texans ended up restructuring his contract. He got a 1-year option, which is going to pay him to $22 million this season alone. The big question is, why did the Texans do that? The only answer is they want the best possible form of Stephon Diggs. If they can get that, then they can maybe start talking about maybe a 2 or 3 year extension on that contract or something. I can understand why they restructured it because, they don't want what the Bills had in Diggs. Diggs was kind of a toxic personality with Buffalo at times. So restructuring it, I think, is going to be pretty huge. I think that's going to end up being a pretty big year for Stephon Diggs and that Texans ball club.
I agree. And I really like how you called out his toxicity, because that is something that has been going around the media, and it's been since before he left the Bills. But I think it got way worse towards the end. I think we can both agree that it definitely got worse and worse as time progressed. And I think, unfortunately, the more the Bills were unable to get it done, the more Diggs got a little upset and a little bit agitated, and that kind of maybe came off in not the best way sometimes. But I think this will be a better setup, and I think the Bills aren't dead in the water because last episode we talked for a while. We talked about teams and their free agent pickups and their offseason pickups, and the Bills were not one of our worst grades, if I remember correctly.
No.
They were a decent grade. They were at least a C+, if I remember. So they're still up there. There's still a team that I think will be able to make a push and still make the playoffs.
Hey.
Maybe even be more successful than this season. You never know.
Yeah, like I said last episode, it all depends on the Josh Allen that we get this next year. If he's exactly like he was last year, the Bills aren't going to make it. But if we can get the Josh Allen from, say, 3-4 years ago, where he's towards the top in the league in passing yards, touchdowns, when the Bills had probably the most dangerous offense in the NFL, if they can get back to that, their defense is solid. The sky is the limit for this Bills team still. Josh Allen still has a lot of weapons to work with. But it just depends on what Josh Allen we get this next year, and we'll see that here in August, September, when the season kicks off.
Yeah, we will, and time will really tell with him. I feel like he's a talent, but I've called him kind of the new Brett Favre with the way he just slings the football, gunslings it, and sometimes it's a great decision, sometimes it's not. He has had way more, in my personal opinion, Josh Allen has had way more good games than bad, way more good decisions than bad on the turf or on the field, whatever you want to call it, for the Bills. But last season was rough as a whole. That was one of his worst seasons as a whole. That was a rough. We've seen like the little blurbs and things we've seen throughout seasons. It was like a whole season of that. That was the whole. We saw it every game. We saw him just making terrible mistakes and even if they won, he'd make terrible decisions during the game.
He led the league in interceptions last year. I think he had something ridiculous, like 19 interceptions, and he maybe threw a couple of more touchdowns than interceptions. It was not a good touchdown to interception ratio at all last year.
Not a good look. Your take is the best way to put it. It depends on what Josh Allen we get. But lucky for Diggs, he doesn't have to worry about what Allen he's getting. He has to worry about C.J. Stroud. And C.J. Stroud so far doesn't look like there's a different C.J. Stroud other than the one that's MVP candidate.
Well,
that is the C.J. Stroud. There is no – I mean, every quarterback has their downside, but C.J. Stroud is an MVP caliber quarterback already. So that's the best quarterback you could go to from Allen and the Bills.
The only thing with C.J. Stroud, we've seen it with other quarterbacks and players in the past, the potential for a sophomore slump, because this is going to be a second full year in the NFL. Like I alluded to earlier in the segment, if we get the C.J. Stroud from last year, good God, man, this team is going to be dangerous as all hell. And they could potentially make it to a Super Bowl, which would be huge for the city of Houston, because Houston has been down for so many years. They've been one of the worst teams in the NFL, and then they finally make the playoffs this last year. And now the expectations are really starting to rise to a level never before seen in the city of Houston. We need to have a good C.J. Stroud, because that's going to make the NFL way more fun to watch when you've got a team like that that's doing really good, kind of out of nowhere. So it should be fascinating to watch as we get into the summer workouts, as we get into fall camp, when things start to fall into place on that roster, see how the roster sets up to start the year. Because there is potential there in Houston, and I appreciate all the Houston fans for listening. If he does well, that team is going to roll. That defense is solid. That offense is very solid. So, yeah. I think this situation with Diggs not only adds another weapon, but I think Diggs is looking for a fresh start somewhere. And the reconstruction of his contract kind of shows that. Because he's going to get paid $22 million this year over 1 year. So, again, time will tell, but things are setting up pretty well in Houston.
Yeah, they really are. And I think they'll continue. The offseason is not over yet, and you never know what other pieces could continue to flow in. And obviously, we have the draft still. And actually, that is where we're going to go to next. We're going to talk a little NFL draft. Obviously, it's a little ways away. We're not going to go into too much detail overall, but we are going to talk about the top 6 and how currently a couple of those players are projected to be quarterbacks. 4, as a matter of fact, out of the top 6 are projected to potentially be quarterbacks, with that number 1 pick for the Bears projected to be Caleb Williams. My question to you is, of those 4 projected quarterbacks that we might see go in that top 6, who do you think has the best rookie season and why? And who do you think has the worst? How about that? Let's go best and worst.
In the top 6, I'm on the CBS NFL website right now looking at their mock draft. And pick 6 is Jaden Daniels to the Raiders. I think Jaden Daniels in the top 6 has more upside than I would say the number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams. Jaden Daniels looked very impressive in the NFL Combine. And he can run the ball. He can throw the ball. His stats last year, 3,800 passing yards, 1,134 rushing yards, 50 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He looked really good. You then go to potential pick number 2 in Drake May. Not as flashy of a stat line, but he's projected to go pick 2 to Washington. Washington needs a quarterback in a pretty big way. And if they get Drake May, they're going to get a pretty good one. 3,600 yards passing, 449 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns or 9 interceptions and 33 touchdowns. Pretty solid stat line. Caleb Williams had some pretty good stats too. But the reason why I'm not putting him at the top of my list is in terms of maybe success in his first year. You look at what he did in his pro workout in front of scouts. They were playing on air, and he was missing wide receivers left and right. Oh, and not to mention all the other off-season stuff. Him wanting partial ownership of the team before he even takes a snap. All the other drama that comes with him. He's a head case. And I don't see him succeeding at the level that we have seen like CJ Stroud. Like we were just alluding to. CJ Stroud had an MVP caliber year last year. I don't see that with Caleb Williams. I'm sorry, Bears fans, but I think getting Caleb Williams is going to be a pretty big mistake. It could pay off. Like we always say, time will tell. But if we're going to sit here right now and talk about quarterbacks with the most upside, I would put Drake May and Daniels over Caleb Williams. What are your thoughts on the quarterbacks in projected top 6?
Yeah, so and here's the thing with the projected top 6. There's so many different boards and projections. I'm going to go, there's an NFL analyst, Maurice Jones, and he released one that's really interesting. It's quarterback heavy, maybe ridiculously so.
Not surprising.
His has Jaden Daniels going second to the Commanders. I think the Commanders could use a quarterback. Obviously, they don't have that. They haven't had a quarterback for years. And then they have McCarthy having the Patriots having interest in McCarthy at 3rd. Again, this is a quarterback heavy list. And then we have Drake May going 5th to the Vikings, trading up for that 5th pick. Despite who goes where, I'm with you on Caleb Williams not being the best. I think he's locked at the number 1 pick. I don't think he should be the number 1 pick. I think he is locked at the number 1 pick. But within all those quarterbacks, I think Jaden Daniels has the best rookie season, no matter where he goes. Would I love to have him on the Raiders? We need a quarterback that is not Gardner Minshew, because that is a backup. He's a good quarterback. He's a solid player. I don't think we obtained him to be the starter. Here's what I will say. There are a couple of different lists that obviously have May outside that top 6, have more lists than not have McCarthy outside that top 6. No matter where these quarterbacks go, they will all be in the top 10. And pretty much every single team in that top 10 needs a quarterback.
Yep.
Pretty much every single, other than maybe, the Titans aren't getting a quarterback, more than likely, and that's one team that doesn't really need a quarterback. Same with the Falcons. They're also a team in that top 10 that doesn't. But when you talk about the Bears, when you talk about the Giants, when you talk about any of those teams that are in that, a lot of those teams need a quarterback, whether they're going to be stars or not in their rookie year. So this is a quarterback heavy class. Again, I'm with you, Caleb Williams. Now, do you think Caleb Williams, that we go as far as Caleb Williams being a bust, or do you just think he will have not a super successful rookie season?
I think he's going to be a bust.
Okay.
I think he's going to get too much into his own head. Even if he has a bad year, he's going to still think he's the best quarterback in the league. That's kind of what we've seen with him in college too, especially. He just thinks so highly of himself, and I don't blame him. He's a gifted athlete. I am not gonna take that away from him. But when he gets into his own head, that's when things will unravel, and the NFL is a complete and total different game. You've got veterans who have been playing in the league for 16 years. And they're not going to take lightly to a rookie quarterback. I think he's going to get he's going to get rattled his first year.
Yeah,
can he improve? Absolutely, but I don't think he's ever going to improve to the level of being an MVP quarterback.
I'm with you. I'm with you for sure. I don't think the Caleb Williams hype is there, but time will tell with that one. I have another interesting pick from an analyst that has Drake May going to the Giants, and I think that is will that happen? Probably not, but if that did, dude, I like that setup. I think that would be giving the Giants exactly the guy they need to move them forward. To be honest with you,
I think so too. This mock draft board has Drake May going second to the Commanders, which I could also see I could really see it.
I think it's Drake May or it's Daniels for who I think are going to have the best season / who I think are the hottest quarterback commodities in the draft. But McCarthy is up there too, because let's not forget who McCarthy is. This is that dude. McCarthy is coming off of being one of, if not considered the best quarterback in college football, just because of the season him and his team had. You yes, statistically not the best, but when you look at the court, they're the leader of the team. It kind of ends with the quarterback occasionally, and he led that team all the way through. It's him. He's the leader. He's that dude. So we can't forget about McDaniel. McCarthy could very well be the best of the best out here.
Yeah, McCarthy on this draft board is at pick 11 in the first round, going to the Vikings, which I could see, and I think that could be a pretty big pickup for that Vikings club, especially since they don't have Kirk Cousins anymore.
They need
and the thing with McCarthy, he was insanely efficient. Yeah, he didn't have the flashiest stat line over the course of the college season, but he completed over 70% of his passes. He knew how to dish it out to his wide receivers. He was very smart with the football. He only had 4 interceptions last year, en route to winning a national championship. Whichever team picks him up in the first round, they're going to get an efficient play caller. And that's what you need in the NFL. If you have an efficient play caller, chances of you making the playoffs are pretty high, because your quarterback's not making those dumb decisions. So I could really, really see JJ McCarthy. If we're going to talk overall first round, JJ McCarthy is going to be toward the top of my list with Jaden Daniels as two players who could really make some noise in year one.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Honestly, I think every quarterback projected, even when you stretch it with those projections to that top like 12-ish, I think every quarterback except Caleb Williams is going to have a potential good rookie season. Not to just exclude him, but I think we're looking at more like Daniels could have a very good year. May could have a very good year. McCarthy could have a very good year. I definitely think that a couple of these quarterbacks could have some decent, at least statistical years. It's just, for me, Caleb Williams is the big turnoff.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got one more question for you. So in this mock
Absolutely.
draft, it's not quarterback central or anything. I'm going to go a different position than quarterback. What do you think about the Jets potentially picking up Rome Odunze from Washington? Really good wide receiver from Washington, very dangerous outside the hashes.
I mean, I think we've got to re-look at the Jets a little bit and ask ourselves if they're maybe going to be a team to look at this year, because Aaron Rodgers not running for vice president. I guess that's not actually happening. So there's
Darn.
not been any news on him in the media or anything lately, which is maybe not a bad thing. But if he's back, give him really any receiver, any wideout, and he has that leadership, that he has that like mentorship, like he can make you great. So having a wideout that's already great, that's a dangerous setup. So I think that's actually possibly a really, 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 really
Well,
dangerous matchup for
it
sure. Pick
it
up.
would be with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. If he is healthy, he can make any wide receiver look
Yeah,
really good. But you also pair it up to the fact that if Odunze goes to the Jets, he's going to be paired up with Garrett Wilson from Ohio State.
yeah.
And Garrett Wilson's pretty damn dangerous too. So if you've got a 1-2 punch at the wide receiver room with Aaron Rodgers healthy, that offense could be insanely fun to watch.
I think
So
they will be. I think we could see scarily one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL, honestly, building up right there pretty quickly with that. So, and Aaron Rodgers, like you said, makes any wide receiver great. It doesn't matter who you are. It's Aaron Rodgers. Like, he does have that impact. He's MVP caliber player who's been that caliber player for years. So if Rodgers comes back healthy, I think they're scary, bro. I really do.
they very scary, but he cannot tear his Achilles within 4 plays of the season. Otherwise, the season's going to be over before it started.
History will repeat itself if that happens.
uh,
Unfortunately for the Jets.
the Jets might think the world's ending at that point.
Probably,
Uh,
yeah. Maybe.
but yeah, as far as the draft and everything goes, as we get closer and as more mock draft boards come up, we can continue talking about it up until the draft. And then obviously when the draft happens, we'll break down some of the pickups and grade them based on what we think they're going to do this next season. Let's move on to some college sports, shall we? And break down a little bit of a Final Four with the women's and the men's. We'll break down the men's first. One of the more enticing matchups this weekend is NC State, the 11 seed, up against 1 seed Purdue. NC State has rattled off 9 straight wins, starting in their conference tournament and then running through the March Madness bracket to make it to the Final Four. Nobody saw it coming. What is your thoughts on this NC State Purdue matchup? Purdue is currently opening up as a 9.5-point favorite. Do you think this NC State team, with how hot they are, can they give Purdue a run for their money to maybe cover? Or do you think they have enough in the tank to maybe knock off Zach Edey and Purdue?
Well, I think it's definitely the more exciting matchup for the Final Four, for the men's at least. I think it's going to be a really exciting game. I wouldn't have said that if NC State hadn't been playing the kind of basketball they've been playing the whole tournament, but they've convincingly won games. They have beat teams that I don't know if I would say they were not expected to beat, but definitely they have beat teams that a different NC State team would not have shown up and beat. I mean, this is a special team. Purdue, though, at the same time, is also a pretty special team that has stayed relevant and stayed hot the whole season. But between these two teams, I'm giving it to NC State. I think NC State pulls off what you can only call an upset because Purdue, obviously, coming in with that 1 seed, being one of the best teams in all of college basketball, that's an upset for sure because NC State's got that lower seeding. But I think top to bottom, NC State will walk away. But it's not going to be a blow up by any means. I think we're going to see a punch for punch game that goes back and forth all the way through. But I think give me NC State walking away 74-68 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I like that pickup. I'm going to go with NC State as well. Just based on the fact on how they're playing basketball right now. They are an exciting team to watch. They're an 11 seed in the Final Four. And this is a team that finished 10th in their conference at the end of the regular season, which is crazy. And they go and beat Virginia in the ACC championship, and they also beat Duke in the ACC tournament. And then they beat Duke again in March Madness. They beat them twice this year. I'm going to go with NC State as well with the 11-1 upset. I think it's going to be close and hotly contested, but I think NC State wins at 82-80.
Ooh, man, that'd be a good game. That would be the games that go down to the wire, whether it's 6-4, 2-1, even 3, whatever it is. Those are the best games, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be a great game. NC State is battle-tested. Purdue obviously is as well, but I just think NC State, it's their time to make it all the way to the end.
Yeah, 100% agree. This Purdue team, I'm not taking anything away from them. This Purdue team is obviously great. They have finally made a Final Four for the first time. I think I saw something for the first time since the 1980s.
Yep.
They've made it this far. So this team is obviously hungry, but they are going to play a buzzsaw in NC State. NC State is absolutely incredible. And I was listening to The Odd Couple on the radio, and they were talking about NC State, and there are people out there not calling them really a Cinderella, and they were wondering why. And it's like, yeah, they have all these really good wins, in the ACC tournament and March Madness. They're still an 11 seed. In terms of seeding, they are a Cinderella. It is unheard of, absolutely unheard of, to have an 11 seed come this far into the Final Four. And need I mention, this NC State team was literally a missed 3-point shot away from not even making the dance to begin with. They had to make a lucky 3-point shot to take Virginia to the ACC championship overtime. Bring that game to overtime, they made a lucky 3, and that's how they won the tournament. And now they're making a serious push to maybe be a national champion. A team that was 10th in their conference standings at the end of last year. Absolutely unheard of, this run that they have had. It's going to be a fun and entertaining game to watch. I think it's going to be easily the most entertaining game in the men's Final Four this weekend. The next game, obviously, is UConn and Alabama. Alabama is another one of those teams that are kind of on a serious run, too, in their own right. They're a 4 seed, 25-11, and they're going to be facing up against a buzzsaw in UConn. UConn has run through their entire March Madness schedule. UConn is for real. They are legit. They're a lot of people's picks to win the national championship, and for right reason. They have won all their games by double digits. The games haven't been close. What are your thoughts on this UConn Huskies and Alabama game? Do you think Alabama could maybe make this game interesting, or do you think it's going to be another UConn runaway?
Well, I think Alabama's going to keep it close for the first half of the game. I think we're going to see the game separated by only 4 to 6 points when we go into half. I think it's going to be a nice, exciting game, but UConn comes out second half, pulls away with it. When I say pulls away with it, they're not winning by 20, but they're winning by 10. I think they're going to win this game. I think it's going to be a little bit of a higher scoring game because these teams have both proved that they can put some points up. So I think they're going to win 90 to 80. I think it's going to be a 90 to 80 win. Alabama's going to put up a fight, but UConn is that team. I mean, you just said it. They've been just blowing through their March Madness opponents, and then even before then, talk about the regular season as well. They've been that team as a whole. So
Yep.
I think they're going to be comfortably back in the championship position for sure. I just think that or the championship game position at least for sure. So give me UConn by 10. What about you?
I'm going to go with UConn by 15.
Ooh,
I think it's going to be close to start. Like the first half, it may be a 2 or 3 point ball game, but I think the athleticism of UConn is going to help propel them, and I think UConn can go on a serious run to end the game. Give me UConn 90 to 75. I think Alabama is just going to lose whatever gas that they had in the first half, and I think UConn's going to pull away, and I think we're going to see UConn win another national championship. They're just that team, and they've been that team for the last couple of seasons now. We used to talk about the UConn women's a bunch. Now it's kind of flipped the script to the men's. The women's team is obviously really good. We'll talk about the Final Four and the women's here in just a few minutes. But what they've done on the men's side is just absolutely incredible. 35-3 overall record this year. That's including the March slate. So again, I think UConn runs away. I think Alabama will give them a run for their money for the first 30, 35 minutes. But I think after that, I think it's game over.
Agreed. I'm with you on that. And you said UConn's winning another championship. I'm with you, bro. I think UConn versus NC State, I think that's where it ends for NC State. I think that's where the Cinderella story ends, which, dude, some talk about, and that's a classic. UConn versus NC State. Those are two storied basketball teams. That's a cool matchup. That's a classic game. I'm really excited for that being the potential.
It's incredible, and the potential to have that matchup is definitely there.
Oh, yeah.
Considering the fact that we just alluded to, NC State has won 9 straight basketball games to get to this point. They have gone on a serious run. They've been winning day after day after day. Like they're playing a game every 1 or 2 days. And you would think that would burn a team out. This team just keeps fighting. And now they're a 14-loss team in the Final Four. And I just alluded to it. They were a missed 3-point shot away from not even being in this position. And yet they have found their way here. Should be exciting, man. I'm excited for the matchups tomorrow. And then I think the national championship is what, Sunday or Monday?
I believe it's on Monday, yeah. So it's coming right up after that. So it'll be really exciting.
It'll be really, really exciting. Let's break down the women's Final Four. First matchup, we just talked about NC State. NC State women are in the Final Four as well, going up against 1-seeded South Carolina. South Carolina is obviously undefeated at 36-0. They open up as an 11.5-point favorite. Do you think NC State gives South Carolina their first loss? Because I think we alluded to South Carolina not even winning the national championship this year. We both don't think they will, considering that they are undefeated, and we think that a team can really sneak up and really get their number in the Final Four. What are your thoughts?
I will say this. I don't think that South Carolina wins it, but I don't think that this is the team to get their number. I think that they win decently comfortably against NC State. I don't think it's going to be a blowout where they're winning by 25 plus points, but I think that they're going to have a pretty. I think this is for me. This is going to be that 15-point win. Give me the South Carolina winning. I think it's going to be a decently high scoring game. Give me 70-55. South Carolina is just going to overpower NC State. But like I said, I do not have them winning at all. So that's kind of spoiler alert for the championship. But I think that South Carolina pulls off one more.
I've got NC State in this one.
Ooh, man. Yes, let's go.
I think NC State, as far as defending goes, I think they can hold South Carolina in check. NC State can also make some shots. Give me NC State on a buzzer beater, 70-68,
man,
over South Carolina.
Dude, that'd be a way to finish. That'd be one of the most exciting finishes so far in the women's tournament.
Yes, absolutely. It should be an exciting game to watch. It opened up at an 11.5-point spread. I think that is too much.
I agree.
South Carolina has played very well, but so has NC State down the stretch to get here. NC State's 31-6. They are definitely no slouch.
No.
So should be an interesting matchup, and that is actually tonight. The women's Final Four starts tonight. So should be fun to watch that one. Our next game should be most likely the most exciting matchup of the weekend for the women's Final Four. We got 3-seeded UConn right back in this position against 1-seeded Iowa. Caitlin Clark is on fire. And if she makes hers, UConn also has shooters too. I'm not denying that. I think Iowa wins this game against UConn. But I want to hear your thoughts first, and then I'll break it down. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I think this should be one of the best matchups we've seen of the tournament so far. I think Caitlin Clark obviously is on a tear, beating LSU and just being one of the best players in the country / probably considered the best women's player in the country currently. But I think one thing I'm excited to see is there's a potential to see Paige versus Caitlin matchup.
Yep.
And we haven't really been able to see that for a while. We haven't been able to see that since they were both younger players. And I think that's going to be extremely exciting. But I think that with that being said, Iowa, as good of a team as they are, because it's not just Caitlin Clark. They wouldn't be winning games like they were if it was just Caitlin Clark.
They've got a good all-around cast.
They do. They definitely do. But top to bottom, beyond Caitlin Clark, UConn's a better team in my personal opinion. And I think Paige, high key, is a better player than Caitlin Clark. But because of injuries, we haven't been able to see that. I think Paige has one more year. She's playing, I believe. I know Caitlin Clark is going to the league, but Paige is playing another season. And I think in that season, she's not going to pass Caitlin Clark for all-time points or anything like that. But I think we're going to see her develop, and we're going to hear the conversation about when she enters the WNBA that she might be better than Caitlin Clark. So I think that that's an exciting head-to-head. I think Paige wins it. I think UConn wins it. But you talked about a game that's like down to the wire. This is my game that's down to the wire. I think UConn walks away in a really, really exciting, really, it's not going to be a buzzer beater, but it's going to go down to the wire. Give me UConn walking away, winning by 3. Give me 83-80. UConn walks away with it.
I'm going to I like the score. I like the score on your prediction. I'm going to go Iowa by 3. I think Caitlin Clark hits a late shot to propel them over UConn. I got Iowa 83-80.
No. And you know who would do that is Caitlin. Like, she hits those shots. That's like she's a
cheat code.
Yeah, she is. When you talk about players that hit those shots, she just got offered $5 million to play in the Big Three. And then I forget who it was, but there's some rapper-led league, and he just offered her $10 million.
Ice Cube.
10 million. Yeah, the Big Three. And then there was another one that was 10 million. So people want to see her play on big stage. I mean, she is that player. Like you said, she's a cheat code. Video game.
A literal cheat. we've seen her hit threes from damn near the logo. And she's kind of like the women's Steph Curry because she has that she has she's got that swagger with her. Everywhere she goes, she can drain shots at will, it seems. The only downside to her is she whines literally every time that something
She
doesn't
does.
get called.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. We talked about that. You called her out last episode for that, and
Yeah,
I think that needs to be called out because that is, yeah. Even her own dad at a game was annoyed at
telling
it.
her to
And
stop.
yeah, yeah, seriously. It's so like, come on. Now.
It became a meme really quick.
Oh man.
But yeah, I think Caitlin Clark is gonna find her stride. I think this is another game where she could score 30 plus. And I think she hits that game-winning shot. To propel Iowa to the national championship. They just knocked off LSU. LSU is a very solid team too. But talking about a team, with players that are so much in their head, LSU is probably one of the biggest teams that have that issue. Kind of thanks to their head coach Kim Mulkey, but yeah, it should be an exciting weekend for the Final Four. With the women's playing tonight, their national championship is going to be on Sunday, and then the men's national championship will be Monday night.
Who do you have winning that women's game?
Iowa NC State for my matchup. I've got Iowa winning.
Ooh, yeah.
I think Iowa wins the national championship this year.
Dude, that would just then Caitlin Clark has done it all for college basketball. Then her resume is it's already stacked, but that would stack it. That would stack it for sure. My matchup, South Carolina versus wow, I'm blanking.
UConn.
UConn. There we go, bro. UConn. I don't think South Carolina wins it. I think UConn. That, in my personal opinion, is the best match. Now, South Carolina versus Iowa is that alternative. I would like that as well. South Carolina versus Iowa would be exciting. But I think South Carolina loses either way. I think South Carolina loses to Iowa. I think South Carolina loses to UConn. Between the two teams, I think UConn would beat South Carolina by a little farther of a margin. I think it's not going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be close until the last 4 minutes. And then UConn is going to show with a coach like Gino and with the master class of that team, they're going to pull away. And Paige is a mismatch for South Carolina. South Carolina does not have a player. Now, does South Carolina have some mismatches for UConn as well?
Yes.
Possibly. Of course. Yeah, there definitely are, especially size-wise, I would say for sure. But give me UConn winning, showing who they are in that last 4 minutes and winning by 6. I think it's going to be a high scoring. I think it's going to be a 96-90 national championship game. And I think UConn pulls it off. But alternatively, give me Iowa winning 86-82 against South Carolina, if that's what happens instead.
Okay. I really do like that matchup as well. It's kind of funny. We both have the winner being in that UConn Iowa matchup. So one of us could be right. We'll see. We'll see come Sunday.
Some picks for the last one, bro. We nailed some of those teams winning. So I think we'll keep this prediction streak up, man.
Yeah, I hope so. One of us will anyway.
Exactly.
Let's stay in college. We're gonna go toward football now. A lot of the big news is a potential for a full super league in college football between the SEC and the Big Ten. Obviously, the SEC and Big Ten are the two superpowers in college football at the moment in terms of money value and top to bottom, all their teams. The big question is it going to be feasible to do a Super League? They're already going to have a 12-team playoff and potential to bump it up to 16 teams, which is crazy. I think 12-team is kind of the perfect setup for the playoff. But what are your thoughts on a potential Super League? Do you think it could be detrimental to the sport, or do you think it could add some more, I don't know. Will an NFL model work in college? What are your thoughts?
I don't think so. I don't, but we're already seeing with NIL and with the way it's changing, we're already seeing different, not the NFL model, but we're seeing a different model of college football as a whole. Do I think it will continue to evolve and change? Yes, but I don't think a super league is what it should be. And I don't think, I mean, we're already kind of inching towards, obviously, with the teams merging to different conferences and everything changing. We're inching, like I said, towards a different evolved college football, but an entirety of like a super league NFL base. I don't know. I really, really like what they're doing now, what they're moving towards now. I think it's a good progression, but I think a super league would be a little bit much. I'm not a very big fan of that concept, if I'm honest. I don't know.
I'm not either.
When you
I'm
break it down piece by piece, it's not as enticing as it sounds maybe at the beginning of it. When you first look at it, but as a whole, I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan either. And that, like, a Super League will break, like, it'll change the entire landscape of college football for sure. Could it be that league and then everybody else that was left out? Everybody else that was left out, there'll be two separate college football leagues pretty much. And I like the Power 5 setup that we've got now with the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12. Pac-12, if it can somehow finagle and get a few more teams, there have been talks of maybe the Mountain West merging with the Pac-12, which I think would be pretty good because the teams in the Mountain West, I think, would fit the Pac-12 motto.
Agreed.
And regionally, it makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see how everything transpires. We're already going to be talking about after this year. Obviously, this year is going to be the first year of a 12-team playoff, which I think is the perfect amount of teams because you've got all of your conference winners, and then you've got some at-large bids that have a shot at potentially winning a national championship. I like that because it could really add to the fact that you could have a Cinderella who gets really hot at the end of the year that could give these teams some run. But a Super League that kind of takes all that away and, so to speak, creates a Super League kind of Super Bowl outside of what we know as the national championship now. I don't know, man. I think it could be very, very detrimental to the sport. And I don't want that. College football is my all-time favorite sport. We're seeing it change. But I don't think it should change that much. I think the way things are going, the way conferences are kind of realigning, which some of the realignments make sense. Obviously, the Pac-12 failed with getting a TV deal. So that saw teams bounce to other conferences because those teams know that they're going to get paid. But yeah, time will tell. Obviously, if anything changes as far as that conversation goes, we'll stay on it. Obviously, we talk a lot of college sports. So then again, we shall see. Time will tell. Let's go over to Nebraska football and our predictions as to what their potential record could be. We are 21 days away from the spring game. I will be in Lincoln for that. The weather should be great. Get my first look at Dylan Raiola and that offense, and it's going to be very vanilla. They're not going to show teams anything. They're going to just keep it very simple. But talking record for next year, what we think that they could be. I'm going to start out with saying here, looking at their first 7 games, there is real potential where they're going to be starting 6-1 to 7-0. They open up against UTEP. UTEP wasn't a very good team last year. Then they play Colorado. Colorado has a bunch of question marks. They might be a little bit better than last year, but I don't think they're going to be top of the Big 12 good this next season. Then you got Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa is a pretty solid football team in their own right too. And then you got Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers. What are your thoughts on the way the schedule opens up for Nebraska? Because it does set up pretty well that Nebraska can really make a run at a pretty good record this next year, considering their first 5 of their first 6 games are at home. What are your thoughts? Do you think Nebraska starts potentially undefeated 7-0 for the first time since 2016?
I think we go until the middle of October until we possibly pick up a loss. I think our first potential loss will come on October 26th against Ohio State. Maybe we pick up a loss against Colorado, but the reason that I don't think we do is, first of all, we're at home. That makes a huge difference in any game. And I don't know if you were at that Miami versus Nebraska home game. I think it was like 2014.
It was hostile in that place.
Yeah, it's going to be the same type of thing. This is a rivalry. I mean, there is going to be no love at all in that stadium. And this is a way better football team. And I don't know about you. I don't know how much you've been paying attention. I've been paying attention too much to Colorado college football news, but they have not looked like they have gotten all that much better this offseason with transfers, with anything such as that. It looks like now, will they be a better? I'm with you. I think they're going to be a better team, but I think we beat them. I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be separated by a touchdown or two, but I think we beat them. So I think, again, until October 26th, I think that is our first potential loss. And then you're looking at a tough slew of games: Ohio State, UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa to finish the season. But I would not be shocked if we win out up until Indiana if we don't pick up any losses.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have Nebraska in my prediction starting 7-0. If they're 7-0, Dylan Raiola's having a good year. If the defense is having another very solid year, look out. Because Nebraska could really make some noise on the back end of their schedule. They go to Ohio State. Ohio State has a lot of question marks as far as who their quarterback is going to be. They picked up Will Howard this offseason from Kansas State, and he's not much different than Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord showed last year that he wasn't a great quarterback. He didn't have the it factor with him, say that like Justin Fields had when he was there, or CJ Stroud for that matter. Ohio State, I don't think is going to be as good as people are going to be making them out to be. I don't think they're going to be a national championship team this next year. If they start 7-0, there's potential here where they can win 3 out of their next 5 games. They finish 10-2. Wisconsin is a team where they are always tough. Had Nebraska had a quarterback that was more consistent, they would have won that game in Madison last year. Had they had an offense that was more consistent, they would have won in Madison. Had they had an offense that was more consistent, they would have beaten Iowa last year. And then, obviously, you got USC, UCLA. No one knows how good those two teams are going to be. I think USC and UCLA could be in for a rough going in their first initial year in the Big Ten because the play style in the Big Ten is way different than they're used to in the Pac-12. They're going to try and instill everything that they did in the Pac-12 in the Big Ten. All the teams in the Big Ten are way more physical. We actually play defense in the Big Ten. I think they're going to be in for a rough going, potentially. Considering USC has question marks at quarterback. UCLA is kind of in the same boat. There's potential there where Nebraska could pick up a couple of these games, which they probably won't be favored in regardless of record. And they win 10-11 games. But there's also potential there where they could lose all 5 of those games and finish 7-5 after starting 7-0.
That is a good point. But of those last 5 games, I think we beat USC, and I think here's what I will say. I think we go 3-2 in those last 5, and I think we beat USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and we possibly lose Ohio State, UCLA. I think maybe that might be what I take. If I don't have us losing all 5, could that unfortunately happen? Yes. The Husker team of a few seasons ago would lose not just all 5, they'd lose all of the games. But luckily, we're past that. But I think we go 3-2 in the last 5. Maybe we don't lose to UCLA. I think we pick up a loss to Ohio State.
I think Ohio State's their only guaranteed loss, I think. But I think it's going to be competitive. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I think Nebraska is going to be they're going to be a very, very good football team going into this next season. That's not just a homer take. You look at their overall roster, they picked up the number 1 overall quarterback in 2024 in Dylan Raiola. And I think Raiola is going to be very, very sharp. There's a lot of people talking, just watching him this spring. Everybody is saying, man, that dude can spin it. Man, that dude is extremely accurate. He's very efficient. He is very efficient. He's a very efficient play caller. We saw that all through high school. He has an extremely high football IQ. He knows what defenses are doing. He knows how to read defense. He can throw wide receivers open. This is a type of quarterback Nebraska hasn't had, dare I say it, since the 1990s. This is the highest rated quarterback that they've had since the 90s. And I think he is in for a pretty solid year. And there's potential there where this team goes from a 5-win ball club last year and a solid quarterback away from maybe being 10-2 because they lost 5 games by the score of 13-10. How the hell can you do that? Lose 5 games by the same score of 13-10. It is unheard of, man. The defense was more than good enough to win all those games. Too bad the offense was the downfall of that team. It was a very, very unbalanced attack. Everybody knew you were going to run it all the time because you had no downfield passing attack. So if they can find that balance, if the defense is better or at least as good, because they were still a top 12 overall unit last year, if the offense can find a way to be a top 25 unit, this team can win 10, 11 games this next year. It's not that far-fetched. But we say that because on paper it looks really good. We'll see when the season kicks off. We'll see when they kick off against UTEP.
True.
If they take care of business, say against UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa to start the season, and then I'm going to even throw Illinois and Purdue in September. If they can take care of business those first 5 games, which I think they will because I think Illinois is going to be a worse team than they were. I think Purdue is not going to be very good. I don't think Colorado is going to make a bowl game for the second straight year. I think they might be a 5-7 team, but they're going to be a little bit more competitive. You take care of business those 5 games and win them convincingly, dare I say it, we have momentum.
Oh, yeah.
We've got momentum that's rolling going up against Rutgers for homecoming that next week. And then you got Indiana, who is likely not going to be a great team. You got Ohio State with a lot of question marks. You got UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa. All those teams have decisive question marks. And if Nebraska can get rid of theirs, and they can play consistent, smart football, don't turn the ball over every other possession, you're cooking with peanut oil. People may laugh and say, oh, Nebraska has sucked the last 10 years. Yes, they have sucked. I am not going to deny that. But you also cannot deny that Matt Rule has done a wonderful job at building this roster to the point where they can really flip the script quickly. He has shown in his last 2 college stops where in his second year they have had sizable jumps from year 1 to year 2. And then year 3 they're competing for their conference championships at Temple and Baylor. I think their 5-7 last year made this run a little bit quicker for Matt Rule because he already had the most wins he's ever had in a year 1. His year 1s at his last 2 college stops, they won 2 games combined at Temple and Baylor. Year 2, they win 7. Year 3, they're winning 11 and competing for the conference championships in the American Athletic Conference and the Big 12. I think it's faster. I think they compete for the Big 10 conference this year. I think they can be very well in the running because I don't think Michigan is going to be as good as they were last year. I don't think USC is going to be great. I think they're going to be a decent team, but I don't think they're going to be great. UCLA, I think Ohio State right now is rightfully so going to be the favorite to win the conference, but I would not be shocked. Not a homer take. I would not be shocked to see Nebraska finish close to the top of the Big Ten standings this next year. I will not.
I'm with you. I'm with you for sure. I think the potential is definitely there. Like you said, time will tell once we're seeing it, actually seeing the games. But those first 5 games, there's so much potential to start 5. And if we do, I think that momentum, like you said, that's set for sure.
Yeah, if they can take care of business, the last couple of schedules, they have opened up against Big Ten opponents. It's hard to start with a Big Ten or conference foe right away and on a neutral site. It's very tough to build any sort of momentum off of that. And now you get 3 games, dare I say it, they're very winnable to open up the year to start 3-0 before you get into conference play against Illinois and Purdue.
Absolutely.
They can really build some serious momentum this first month and a half. Going up against Ohio State, which if Nebraska is 7-0, Ohio State may be undefeated too. That's a top 10 matchup and maybe a college game day. College game day shows up and they're in Columbus for that game. It is very, very possible. Absolutely. Especially if the ball is rolling and Nebraska is taking care of business on both sides of the ball. Time will tell. Obviously, spring football is 21 days away. The game is 21 days ago. Yeah, it's coming up here in 3 weeks. And we get our early look at this team. They're not going to show anything, obviously, but we still get our first look. The weather should be nice. Get out. If you're a Nebraska fan listening here, go out there. Support these kids. Let's get 70+ thousand in the stadium again for a spring game. Be absolutely cool to see. And then soon enough, it'll be summer workouts and fall camp. This year's flying by. We're already in April. August 31st is going to be here before we know it. Can't wait. Open up against UTEP. I cannot wait. But obviously we'll talk more Husker football as we get closer and closer to the season. And heck, even if news breaks out, we'll still talk about them. We'll probably talk about them at least a little bit each and every episode. But yeah, we'll obviously have more. Let's move on to Husker Baseball. Husker Baseball is off to a very, very solid start. They're 20-6. They had a heartbreaking loss to Creighton on Tuesday, and they have a 3-game series against Ohio State. Do you think Nebraska sweeps Ohio State, or do you think at best they do 2 out of 3? I think they're good either way. I think they win at least 2 out of 3, but I think they do have potential to sweep them at home.
They definitely are not losing less than 2, without a doubt. They're definitely winning at least 2 of those, but I think they sweep. I think they sweep them out. I think this Husker baseball team has proven that they're on a different level than they've been, honestly. They look top to bottom like a better team. So I think the Huskers get the brooms out. I think we're sweeping them, which sweeping Ohio State, I don't care what sport, sweeping Ohio State feels good. So let's go.
Yeah.
We haven't done it yet, I guess, but I'm calling it. I'm confident, as you can tell.
Yeah, I think Nebraska baseball ends up 23-6 after this season. I don't know if you've seen this, but on Twitter, there were projections of regionals. Nebraska is the current favorite to host a regional with the likes of LSU, Creighton, and I think one other team. That would be quite the regional at Haymarket Park, if I do say so. Be quite the host. And Nebraska hasn't hosted a regional in a long time, so should be pretty exciting for Husker baseball. I think they get the job done this weekend, and then they play Tuesday against Kansas, and then they go to Rutgers. That's quite the travel or amount of travel that they have to do.
They have a Creighton rematch too, don't they?
Yeah, they have two more matchups.
What do you think? They just drop. What do you think about that? Who do you think they can bounce back and pull it off and match up against them next time?
I think they'll bounce back. I think Nebraska beats Creighton in the next two. I think they win the 2 out of 3 and win the season series when all is said and done. But I was just alluding to Nebraska's got quite the amount of travel that they've got to do this next week. They play Ohio State, and then the 9th, they go down to Lawrence, Kansas. Not too bad. And then they're going right out to Piscataway, New Jersey to play Rutgers for a 3-game series, the 12th through the 14th. Then they play Creighton at Haymarket Park on Tuesday the 16th. And then they have a pretty big homestand through late April. No, going into May, they have quite the homestand. They're home through the 28th of April after they get home from Piscataway. And then they play at Creighton to end their season series with Creighton, and then they play versus Kansas State, which I think is a rescheduled game from earlier in the year that got canceled due to severe weather down in Manhattan. And then they, I think, finished the season off against Minnesota, they finished off with Minnesota, South Dakota State, and Indiana, Michigan State, and then that's it, and it goes in the conference tournament.
Dude, they've got a really nice schedule, honestly. Other than some of the this upcoming road schedule is a little bit tricky, but once we get past that, bro,
everything is at home. Once they get back from Piscataway,
just got to make it through that.
If they can find a way, this team will have 30 plus wins going into the regionals and going into the conference tournament, which will be cool to see. This team is on definitely another level than we have seen.
Do you think this is the best? It's hard to gauge just because it's all different sports. But do you think that this baseball team potentially has the potential to be the best Husker sport this year / go the farthest, maybe go far and continue their season post? Or do you think they'll fizzle out? Do you think they've got because right now they look like that team?
They're really good. I do think this baseball team has potential to not only continue the regular season run that they're having. I think Nebraska baseball wins the Big Ten. I really do. I think they're a step or two above everybody else in the Big Ten. And I do think they could potentially make a run in the postseason. I think they can make it to the super regionals. We forget a couple of years ago, they were literally an inning or so away from making it to the CWS.
They were right.
They were really close. They were in the super regionals and they almost won the super. But they gave up a home run and they ended up losing it.
Oh man, that was rough.
And then they lost another super regional to Arkansas in a heartbreaking fashion. They almost made it to 2 College World Series. We forget. So Will Bolt can get this team right back to where they want to be, and I think they're well on path well on the path
Agreed.
to get back. I do think this team could make a very, very serious run. They're currently ranked 24, but I think they're one of the top 15 college baseball teams in the country right now.
Oh yeah, easily.
Their RPIs in the top 10. Their strength of schedule is, I think, sitting at 30th. But the way that they've been winning against some of these teams, whether it be comebacks or they're blowing teams out, they're really good. And I'm excited to see where this team can go over the next month and a half, maybe a little over a month and a half to get into the Big Ten tournament. Probably as the overall number 1 seed, which means they'll get a bye. And then everything is smooth sailing from there, hopefully, going into the postseason. But we shall see, man. It's exciting. They're a legit team this year.
Absolutely.
Let's transition over to softball. Softball's on quite a run too. Softball sitting at 22-13 right now. They have won 6 straight. They are 5-0 in conference. They're another team that's likely favored to win the conference. They're pretty solid, and the question is, over the next half of the season, where do we think they're going to end up? I think they're going to stay where they're at. Obviously, they're going to add wins, but I think they're going to stay at the top of the Big Ten. I think they're going to keep the ball rolling. They play. Let's see here. Let's get to the schedule. They play Penn State this weekend in Bowlin Stadium at home in Lincoln, the 5th through the 7th. I think Nebraska takes 2 out of 3 there. They play Rutgers. I think they can sweep Rutgers in a 3-game series. I don't think Rutgers is very good. I think they take 3. They play at Michigan, another winnable series. They play Iowa, who can be pretty tough in softball, in a 2-game series. Actually, it's a double header, it looks like. Maybe a rescheduling. But they play at 4 and then at 6:30 on the 23rd against Iowa. So it's back-to-back games.
Man.
Against Iowa, and if they take one of those at least, I'd be happy. They play Northwestern again, another team that they have beaten pretty handily. They play Minnesota, and then there's the Big Ten tournament. The schedule is shaking out too for this softball team to make a run. Obviously, they don't have Jordy Ball. Jordy Ball was the biggest storyline coming to Nebraska. She's a 2-time national champion, but she tore her I think it was her ACL in the opening weekend, which sucks because she is one of the best pitchers in college softball when she's healthy. She had a .9 ERA at Oklahoma, but Nebraska is finding a way to win without her. Nebraska has a pretty good core of players. They could make a serious run too. They just got their 1,000th program victory the other day, which was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on softball? And do you think they can make a potential run to end the season? Maybe win the Big Ten regular season and maybe win the Big Ten tournament?
I think they do exactly that. I think they win the regular season out and the tournament. I think this is, and they're without their prolific, projected best player. So that's huge. They're this team without that. So honestly, as exciting as this year is, just think about next year, bro. It's going to be ridiculous. This year, they're going to go on a run. I think they win the Big Ten regular and the Big Ten tournament. But I think next year they win it all. I'm talking about the whole thing, go all the way in the postseason and win it all. I think they go that far next season. I really do.
The potential is there, especially if Jordy Ball stays healthy. If Jordy Ball stays healthy, she has shown back in Oklahoma, 2 years, back-to-back national champs. She had a .8 ERA. She gave up less than a run a game, which is absolutely astronomical. She is
Insane.
damn near automatic on the mound. And don't forget, softball pitchers can pitch a lot more than baseball players. So she's going to be out there for like 22 games out of the season.
Whew.
And hey, you know what they say? Throwing underhand is a lot better than throwing over.
Yeah.
You
Oh
can
yeah.
hurt a lot less things doing that.
That is very
So
true.
that's why you see softball pitchers going out there and posting 23-0 records or
Man,
something like that. It's
crazy.
absolutely crazy. Softball is definitely a different ball game than baseball. But yeah, I agree. If Jordy Ball is healthy going into this next season, I do think this year they can still make a pretty sneaky run in the postseason. I think next year they can really have one of the top 5 softball programs in the country. I do think they have potential to win it all, especially if Jordy Ball stays healthy and she can go through rehab and rehab that leg that she hurt earlier in the year to get back. I think Nebraska having the facilities that they do, they're not going to have a problem rehabbing her back to health. She'll be right back in the weight room, putting as much weight as possible on that leg to get ready. But yeah, I do think Nebraska can very much so make it all the way next year. I think next year is going to be huge for that program.
Agreed.
To win their first overall national championship, that'd be
Man,
pretty big for this state.
that'd be gigantic. That would be really, really big. And I think it's definitely in the cards, but time will definitely tell. And I think this season, it's not like we're talking about them like this season's over and they don't even have a shot at winning the Big
This
Ten. I mean,
season's definitely not
this
over.
season's nowhere near over, but I just think next season is going to be where they make it to that next level, especially having their best player back. And just overall, I think they're going to be in that spot. But time will obviously tell with that. Moving on, we're about wrapping up for this show, but we have a few more segments to go over. Really light on our NBA, but we are going to go over, because the NBA playoffs are under a month away. We're going to go over just our projections or predictions for the first round. Obviously, the standings could change / will change within the last week of basketball, or however many days of basketball. They're changing every single day, but I guess starting with play-in, currently the Lakers are 9th and the Warriors are 10th, and then the Pelicans are 7th and the Kings are 8th. I'm just going to give my projection and prediction, because I think the Lakers will finish 8th. I think it's going to be Lakers versus Pelicans in that play-in game, and the Lakers win and finish at that 7th seed. And then I think it's going to be Kings and Warriors for the 9th and 10th spot, and for the 8th seed. And I think that the Kings win. So I think it's going to be Kings and right now it's Kings and I actually don't want that. I guess I'd make Lakers Nuggets round 1 if it's how it is right now, but I will say I have the Nuggets finishing first. So if it's what I think it's going to be Lakers versus Nuggets at that or Lakers versus Timberwolves at that 2nd and 7th spot, and then it's going to be Nuggets versus Kings at that 1st and 8th spot. That's kind of who I think fills in those gaps for the play-in. Within that, I think if it is Lakers versus Timberwolves, I have the Lakers winning in 6 games. And then if it's Nuggets versus Kings, I've got the Nuggets winning in 6. Moving on to the next round. Clippers versus Mavs, I've got the Mavs walking away in 6 games. And then if it remains, which I think it will remain, Suns versus OKC, that's a really, really exciting matchup.
Yep.
And I've got the Suns actually winning in 7 games. So that's what I have the West being for round 1. What about you, bro? It was kind of a mess getting through all that. But what do you have?
It is kind of a mess because it is such a close race between all those teams to get into the playoffs and a close race to get the seeding set.
It really is.
Like, you've got the Timberwolves and then you've got the Nuggets that are just behind them. The Nuggets can very well end up being the number 1 overall seed in the West. I don't think that's too far-fetched. So can the Thunder, though. The Thunder is right there. But if everything sets up, I don't think the Lakers stay at 9. I think they do move up to 8. And that would put them up against the Pelicans. That would be a pretty enticing matchup. The way the Lakers are playing, though, I think they beat the Pelicans, which, if the Pelicans stay in that 7 spot, that would put the Lakers playing as the 7 seed over the Nuggets.
I hope that changes, bro. That's the one thing
And the Nuggets are obviously kind of the new dynasty in the West right now.
Yeah, they really are.
And the Nuggets could very much so win it all again. But if that comes into fruition and say the Lakers play the Nuggets, which in this case I think they will. I think they have enough to beat the Pelicans, especially if Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and the rest of their core stay healthy. I think the Nuggets win it in 6. I think the Lakers have what it takes to win at least a couple of games. But I think the Nuggets have too much firepower, win it in 6. As far as the 9 seed goes, I think the Kings will move to the 9, and that would put them up against the Warriors. I think the reign for the Warriors is done. I think the Kings will beat the Warriors in the play-in. That would put them up against the Timberwolves, and I think the Timberwolves win that one in 5. I don't think that series is going to be anywhere close. Clippers, Mavs, I have the Mavericks winning that series pretty convincingly in 5. The Clippers currently don't really have that defined leader on their team. It's just a bunch of individuals. That's their downfall, and it will be their downfall in the playoffs. I've got the Mavs winning that one. The Thunder and Suns have potential to be the most exciting series in the first round in the West. I've got the Thunder. The Thunder are legit. The Suns, obviously, with Devin Booker and Paul, they can make some serious noise too. But I've got the Thunder. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just absolutely ridiculous. And he's probably the best point guard in the NBA, bar none. And then I obviously just talked about the Nuggets and the Lakers potentially playing that last game in the first round. What are your thoughts on the East?
Yeah, well, the East is definitely interesting. I think the 9th and 10th spot are obviously set. I've got the Hawks winning that 9th, 10th game pretty easily against the Bulls. I think the Hawks are a better team, and Trae Young should be. I think he's either already back or he is returning before the regular season finishes, is projected right now. Looking at the 7th and 8th, though, I think the Heat have been hotter lately, and the Pacers just dropped 2 games back-to-back to the Nets, which is a really bad look. And so I can actually see the Pacers dropping out of that 6th seed and finishing 7th, and the Heat finishing 6th. So then that's Pacers versus 76ers at that 7th and 8th seed.
Could be entertaining.
I think it will be for sure. I will give it to the 76ers because of Embiid being back. So then that puts Embiid versus Giannis and the Bucks in round 1, and then it'll be the Hawks versus the Pacers, and I've got to give it to the Pacers over the Hawks for sure, which makes for a way better round 1 matchup for the Celtics, because if they were playing the Hawks, that'd be a sweep, I feel like. So
yeah,
looking at round 1, that makes 76ers versus Bucks. Got to give it to the Bucks. I do think they'll beat the 76ers, but I think it'll be a 7-game series. And then Celtics versus Pacers, got to give it to the Celtics, but I think that'll be a 6-game series. Knicks versus Magic, I've got to give it to the Knicks. Ooh, you know what? Actually, Julius Randle's out for the season. So because
I'll go with
of
the Magic.
the size of the Magic, I'm going to give it to the Magic, but I think it's going to be a 7-game series because the Knicks are no slouch. And then looking at that Heat versus Cavs series, I've got to give it to the Heat. I've got to give it to the Heat in 7 games. So I think the East is going to be potentially a little more interesting round 1 than the West might be.
Yeah, I would have to agree. As far as who the Celtics are going to play, I think they play the Pacers in round 1. I do think if it is the Pacers, I think it's going to be a little bit more of an entertaining series than it would be if the Hawks played in their position. The Hawks aren't very good. They're a below 500 team, and the fact that we've got below 500 teams in position to make the playoffs is crazy.
Just a little bit.
But if it's the Pacers getting in there and playing their way in as potential 8 seed, I think the Celtics win that one in 6. I do think it's going to be a close series to start out, but I think the overall athleticism of the Celtics and their size will get to the Pacers a little bit. The Magic and Knicks, I'm going to have to give it to the Magic because, as you're alluding to, one of the Knicks' top players is out for the year. And the overall size of the Magic, I think they're going to create mismatches over that Knicks team. I have the Magic winning that one in 5. I don't know if the Knicks will have enough firepower to keep up. As far as who the Cavs play, I think the Heat will move up to that 6th spot, and I do think the Heat will win that series against the Cavs. Because when it comes to the playoffs, the Heat the last couple of years, they're a different monster in the playoffs, man. They've knocked off the Bucks when they're the overall number 1 seed, and they've knocked out the Celtics when they were the overall number 1 seed. So I'm going to give it to the Heat as well. It's hard to bet up against the Heat. Yes, I'm a Heat fan. No, it's not a homer pick. It's just it's a pick based on facts. When it comes to the playoffs, Jimmy Butler's on a whole nother level. Bam Adebayo is on a whole nother level. Tyler Hero's on a whole nother. I can go on and on and on and on about it. I do think the Heat win that one in a close 7-game series. And then I'm going to have to put Bucks 76ers in there for that last game in the first round. I do think the Bucks will have... Actually, I don't know. The Bucks have kind of fizzled in and out.
They have, really.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough pick, right? But if Joel Embiid stays healthy for the 76ers, I think the 76ers will have what it takes to knock off the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round.
Man, that would be the second year in a row that we're looking at a team below a top 4 seed knocking out
a 2
Bucks.
Yeah,
that'd be the second seed. That'd be the second. I will say this one would make a little bit more sense with Joel Embiid. Like the Bucks losing to the Heat was shocking. That was a shock. That was not.
Well,
not once we got into the series and saw how the series was going, but initially before you went into the series, I didn't pick that.
I didn't pick them either because at the time the Bucks were on a completely different level. They were in the position of where the Celtics are right now. They were the top overall seed.
They looked for sure. I think it would make more sense for sure if we saw them drop this one, but there's potential there for sure.
There's a lot of potential, but we were just alluding to this. The races for some of these spots to get seeded for the playoffs. We've got 1 week left in the season. A lot can change outside of maybe the top in the East. A lot can change in this next week. And we could see the Thunder be the number 1 overall seed in the West, which could change some things up. We could see the Nuggets be the number 1 overall seed, which can change things up. We can see the Lakers potentially stay where they're at in 9, and they're playing the Warriors, which, by the way, would be a pretty entertaining game.
It would.
That could change. A lot can change in this next week. And obviously this next week, when we're breaking down, because I think most of the playoff stuff should be set by the end of next week.
Mm-hmm.
So we will obviously break down the overall bracket because everything should be more set in stone by Friday, Saturday. And then I think playoffs start the week after that. So
It's cooking right away.
It gets cooking.
About.
It should be exciting. There's going to be a lot to talk about, man.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
It's going to be good. We'll obviously this next week we'll break down more of the NBA playoffs. We'll probably have a more elongated segment breaking down teams, what they can bring, and will there be upsets in the opening round? We shall see, especially when we get the play-in games done. See how teams are playing at the time. We shall see. Let's go to the MLB and kind of break down kind of the opening week for most teams. I'm just gonna go rattle down the line in the American League, and then we'll break down our teams, see what we think. Where do you think we'll end up? We've got the Yankees. Yankees in first in the East in the American League. Boston Red Sox right behind them. Orioles right behind the Red Sox. Tampa Bay and then Toronto. The American League Central is interesting to start the year. I did not think the Detroit Tigers would get off to a 5-1 start. They're in first. Tied for first is the Cleveland Guardians. Right behind them, the Twins. Right behind the Twins, the Royals, and then the White Sox are kind of in a league of their own at the bottom of the Central to start. You've got in the West, Texas Rangers, Angels, Mariners, Astros, and Athletics in that order. National League East, which I think the National League races are going to be pretty interesting as we go throughout the entire year. We got the Braves, Phillies, Nationals, Mets, and the Miami Marlins, which the Miami Marlins, woof, are 0-8 to start the year. That is a very, very tough look. In the Central, in the National League, you got the Pirates, the Brewers, the Reds, the Cubs, and the Cardinals, probably in the closest division to start the year. Everybody is within 2.5 games, and everybody is 500 or better to start the year. So that's going to be a very interesting division race as the season goes on. In the West, the Los Angeles Dodgers, not a shock. They're at the top of the division. 2 games back, you got the Diamondbacks. 3 games back, you've got the Padres. 4 games back, you got the Giants. Oh, it's all in numerical order. 5 games back is the Colorado Rockies. Colorado Rockies, man, they are, the Marlins are 0-8, but the Rockies, woof, against the Diamondbacks, they give up 16 runs in 1 inning, which broke a single inning record. Their pitching is atrocious. That's tough, man. And are you a Rockies guy?
I'm not a Rockies guy.
Okay.
I've been to some Rockies games, and because that was one of the closer professional baseball teams to where I lived, but no, not a Rockies guy. Luckily not. I'm avoiding that one. That'd be rough. I don't know if I could handle that, man.
As far as breaking down where our teams go, what do you think about your team thus far in the season? Do you think they can make a run in their division, or do you think they're going to stay right around where they're at?
Well, I'm not sure I know we've talked plenty of baseball before. I'm not sure if I've said my team before, but it's kind of, sometimes I'm a little embarrassed to say it because I'm a Lakers fan and I'm a Yankees fan.
The Yankees are off to a very, very hot start, man.
They're off to a great start. That being said, now that I've gotten that out of the way and gotten that off of my chest, Yankees are off to a really good start. Yankees look, but they always look good, and then they're a team that fizzles out. They can't keep that momentum, whether it be postseason or for the full regular season. So do they look great? Yes, but I need to see them look great in a couple of months. That's where I'm at with them, but they look fantastic. They really do.
They look good. They're off to one of their hottest starts in a while.
But your team, though, is looking pretty exciting right now, man. I mean, they don't have the same record as my boys, but when we break it down, they look like they're cooking something up.
Their starting pitching is solid, whether it be Seth Lugo, Cole Reagans, Brady Singer. their top 3 pitchers right now, they're really good when it comes to starting pitching. They've also gotten 11 home runs to start the year in their first 7 games. They are cooking. As far as they're starting to cook on the offensive side of the ball, their bullpen is kind of their downfall right now. And that's what lost them their 4 games that they played. This Royals team could very well be undefeated or maybe have 1 loss if it weren't for their bullpen. Because the games that they were in that they lost, they were all close games. They were all quality starts by starting pitchers. They had given up 1 run and then they end up losing the game 5-1 or, some other BS. But yeah, I am very happy where this Royals team is stacking up. And I do think, and there's a lot of people picking them at the end of the season to potentially win the division. This team can do that. Bobby Witt Jr. is off to a solid start, whether it be on offense, and his defense is Gold Glove caliber too. On offense, he's batting almost 400 in the first 10 games or within the first 10 games of the season. They're solid, man. They're in a very solid spot to make some noise. They got off to a slow start, but I'm not hitting the panic button the first 10 games into the season. I'm going to wait until June, July to really hit the panic button if they are 20 or 30 games below 500, which I don't foresee happening. I think at least they're a 500 ball club. But I do think they can wiggle their way into a wild card at the end of the year if they don't win the division.
I agree. I like dude. The Royals are exciting. Like, they look like a team that's going to have momentum because they already do. And 11 home runs. That man.
Yeah,
dude, that's bacon out there, bro. That's crazy.
Let me pull up their stats real quick because 11 home runs, 7 games into the season is crazy. Let me see if I can find their stats right now. Maikel Garcia has 3 home runs to start the year, and he's a player last year who played 14 games and he hit, or no, he played over 20 games and he already had 14 home runs within his first 30 games on the diamond. So he's off to a hot start. 3 home runs in his first 7, and then you've got Salvador Perez, who has 8 RBIs already batted in his first 7 games, which is cool. On base percentage, you got Bobby Witt Jr. He has a 500 on base percentage, 12 hits also by Bobby Witt Jr. Oh, and by the way, he leads the team in batting average at 429. He is batting over 400 to start the year. And as far as, other players on the team that are off to a really good start, I mentioned Garcia. Perez is batting over 300. You've got Kyle Isbell, who's batting over 270. You got MJ Melendez, who is batting a 333 batting average right now. You got Nelson Velasquez, 294 batting average. Adam Frazier, who is one of their top pickups to start the year, is batting 250. So yeah, they're in a pretty solid spot as far as our offense goes, and there's a lot of season left to get some momentum brewing. They could very well end up in a spot where they can win the division, because I do think this division is going to end up being a close race at the end of it all.
Agreed. No, I think it definitely will be. It'll be exciting, man. This is just the beginning of baseball. I'm super excited. We're going to have so much more to talk about with this season.
Yeah,
it's going to be an exciting year.
It's going to be a very, very exciting year. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of news that breaks, and we'll definitely be on top of all that. It's not going to be only a big year for MLB, but for college baseball as well. As we start nearing the end of the season, we got a month and a half left of the college baseball season, and then we'll be starting regionals late May into early June. So, man, it's starting to heat up when it comes to the playoff races in a couple of sports. Obviously, we're quite a ways away in the MLB. We're 155 games away from really talking about the playoffs there. But, man, it is super exciting. obviously, we appreciate every single one of you, for whether you're watching us on the Yankee and the Brit or coming to our channel and spending your time with us, watching us on our channel, or even on Spotify, spending your time listening to us on Spotify or any of the other streaming platforms that we're on. We sincerely appreciate you guys for listening, watching. If you guys have any feedback, feel free to get at us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, even on Spotify. If you have anything that you want us to talk about, feel free to let us know in the comments down below, whether it be on Yankee of the Brit, our channel, or any of our social media pages. It could be TikTok.
Yeah.
Just feel free to give us your recommendations on what you want us to talk about, and we will find a way to fit it in to our lineup each and every week that we're on. But yeah, do you have any closing thoughts at all?
Thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. And like he said, wherever you're catching us, make sure you hit us with a subscription and tune into Yankee and the Brit, the other shows on there, and just we'll be back next week to talk more sports for you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we will catch you guys next time.